Think about the last time you kissed someone. That instinct, lips finding lips, feels like it should be one of the most human things you do. It isn't. The easy assumption is that kissing started as some kind of human mating ritual, a way to get close enough to size someone up, maybe test for chemistry, maybe just show affection. That story makes sense. It's also almost certainly backwards, because mouth-to-mouth contact like this didn't start with a human courting another human. It started somewhere much stranger. In 2024, researchers studying the evolution of ape behavior traced mouth-to-mouth contact back to a single common ancestor of the great apes: chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, and us. Their estimate: this behavior first appeared somewhere between 21.5 and 16.9 million years ago. For context, that's tens of millions of years before anything resembling a modern human existed. Whatever kissing is, it isn't a human invention. You inherited it. So what were these ancient apes actually doing with their mouths? Not romance, maintenance, grooming, searching through each other's fur for parasites, dirt, and dead skin, mouth included, because lips and tongue can reach what fingers can't. And researchers studying this behavior describe it as doing two jobs at once. It kept bodies clean, but the same researchers behind the 2024 study argue grooming also worked to signal and strengthen social and kinship ties between the animals doing it. The mouth contact ending wasn't incidental. It was already carrying social weight long before it had anything to do with romance. Here's the leading explanation for how that turns into a kiss. Researchers propose that mouth-to-mouth or mouth-to-skin contact is the tail end of a grooming session, the moment right after the debris has been cleared, when the groomer's lips linger for a beat against the groomed animal's skin or fur. Over time, across an enormous span of evolution, that closing gesture appears to have been preserved even in situations that had nothing to do with parasites at all, a way to reinforce a bond that grooming had already built. Now bring that forward to you. Somewhere in your ancestry, hominins lost most of their body hair, a separate, still debated part of the story. That should have made the ritual pointless. There was less fur to search, less need for the hygiene work that started the whole behavior. But the closing gesture didn't disappear. It survived without the job it was built for and got repurposed from a practical grooming step into a pure bonding signal, stripped down to just the ending. That's the leading hypothesis, not a proven fact. Mouth contact is hard to preserve in fossils, so researchers are reconstructing behavior, not reading it directly off bones. What they're actually working from is comparative behavior across living great ape species today, mapped back onto the family tree to estimate when a shared ancestor most likely already had the habit. It's the same logic used to reconstruct all kinds of ancient behavior that never fossilizes. Not direct proof, but a well-supported inference built from everything alive today. Here's where it gets more specific to your own species' story. Neanderthals, the closest extinct relatives of modern humans, very likely kissed too. The evidence isn't a cave painting. It's biology. Humans and Neanderthals share oral microbes, the kind of bacteria that typically pass between individuals through saliva. And we already know from ancient DNA that humans and Neanderthals interbred. Put those two facts together and close repeated mouth contact between our species and theirs is the most reasonable explanation. So if the biological wiring for this goes back tens of millions of years, and even other human species were probably doing it, you'd expect kissing to be universal today. Cross-cultural research has found that romantic or sexual kissing is documented in only around 46% of studied human societies, less than half. In plenty of places, closeness and affection get expressed a completely different way, with no mouth contact involved at all. And that's the real complication. The instinct for the behavior appears to be ancient and shared. Whether a culture turns that instinct into a romantic kiss is a decision made much more recently by people, not evolution. Think about what that actually means. Two groups of people can inherit the exact same ancient wiring and still end up with completely different customs, because the wiring only supplies the raw instinct for closeness, not instructions for what to do with it. That's a pattern that shows up again and again in human behavior, and kissing turns out to be one of the clearest examples of it. A single ancient mechanism, dressed up differently depending entirely on where and when you happen to be born. So layer it together. The raw mechanism, lips, mouths, close contact as a bonding gesture, is something you share with apes that lived over 20 million years before the first human stood upright. Your ancestors didn't invent the impulse. They inherited a body already wired to use closeness this way, left over from a routine that used to be about picking parasites out of fur. What's happened since is that humans took that inherited ancient bonding gesture and split it into a dozen different jobs: romantic, familial, social, ceremonial. Some cultures leaning hard into it, others building their closeness rituals somewhere else entirely. That's not a contradiction. It's what happens when a very old biological instinct meets thousands of independent, unrelated human cultures, each deciding for itself what to do with it. It also means that somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, a Neanderthal may have done something recognizably similar to what you did the last time you kissed someone. Not because they learned it from you, obviously, but because you both inherited the same ancient wiring from something that came long before either of you. That's a strange thing to think about, the next time it happens without you even deciding to do it. It's also worth noticing which version of this gesture shows up first in your own life. Long before romance, most people experience mouth-to-skin affection from a parent. A kiss on the forehead, the cheek, the top of the head. That ordering fits the bigger picture. The underlying gesture is built for closeness in general, and romance is just one of several jobs humans have loaded onto it over time, alongside family affection, friendship, and greeting customs in different cultures. So back to the moment you pictured at the start. Kissing itself, the raw instinct for close, mouth-based contact as a bond-building gesture, is not a human invention. The evidence points to an origin in a shared great ape ancestor, tens of millions of years ago, most likely as the closing step of a grooming routine that outlived its original hygienic purpose. What's genuinely still open is why some cultures turned that instinct into romance and others didn't. A question about human societies, not evolution, and one the evidence here can't fully answer. Either way, the next kiss you share is older than your species. To be precise about the confidence levels here, the ancient origin of mouth-to-mouth contact as a great ape behavior rests on a single, recent, well-reasoned study, not decades of converging evidence. So treat the exact dates as a strong estimate rather than a fixed number. The claim that Neanderthals likely kissed is a reasonable inference from biology, not a direct observation. And the 46% figure describes documented, studied cultures, not a literal census of every human society that has ever existed. Each piece is solid on its own terms. Together, they still leave real, honestly labeled gaps. Here's a question for the comments. Does your culture treat kissing as romantic, or is closeness shown some other way where you're from? Next time, we're looking at the other side of that grooming story. Why did humans lose most of the body hair every ancestor before them was covered in?